Alright, hello and welcome to today's video where we're going to be talking about people pleasing and people pleasing behavior and this kind of whole concept and idea that we can be a people pleaser and that is a bad thing and that's a shameful thing, and all of the kind of talk in the health, wellness, spirituality, therapy world about people pleasing and how people pleasing is not okay and how we need to set boundaries and we need to be true and real to ourselves and all of this stuff. And this is something that I really want to talk about because it's something that I feel like every single person on the planet has some level of people pleasing tendencies. And this is something that I think we are being trained that we're supposed to completely transcend. That we're supposed to get into this space where we're just able to be fully and completely authentically ourselves in every single moment of every single day. And anytime we abandon ourselves, anytime we people please, anytime we are not, authentic in our emotions, not authentic in our expression, where we do things that other people want us to do that we don't want to do, where we abandon ourselves and all of this stuff, that every time we do that and every moment of doing that is bad and wrong and shameful, and that we need to fix that and heal that, and we need fixing and we need healing if we have any of those habits and if we have any of those tendencies ever. And don't worry, because again, right, in the wellness, self-help, spirituality world, there are 1.5 million different methods and modalities and teachers and teachings and courses and things that you can take and things that you can do to improve yourself so that you won't be a people pleaser. And again, I think that this conversation needs nuance, it needs complexity, it needs depth, and it needs exploration. Because again, number one, the fact that so many of us have people-pleasing tendencies already, which we're going to talk about today, come already from a place of feeling insecure. They come from a place of not feeling safe to be ourselves. So it's innocent. It's starting from a place of not feeling good. And then instead of us having compassion for ourselves, or being trained how to have compassion for ourselves, or being given tools for being kind to ourselves, which would actually help us figure out how to be more authentic and more comfortable being our true selves, we're then shamed by the people who are claiming that they're going to help us. We're told that this is a bad thing, that this is something that's wrong with us, something that we need to fix. And again, we're not being offered the actual reasons why we people please. We're not really being supported in being told where these things come from and the innocence behind it. And we're not being given the real tools that we need to be able to do less people pleasing, to be more authentic, to come into our own selves most of the time. We're actually just being shamed more. And that is a huge problem. So, very, very first thing that we're going to say, just like in every video, if you have people pleasing tendencies, if you are someone who knows that you abandon yourself, who knows that you pretend to be somebody that you aren't around different people, who knows that you adapt your personality to the people that you're around, who knows that you feel deeply, deeply afraid of rejection and being left out, and that you feel like if you were your true self, that you wouldn't be safe, there is nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are not just making bad choices. You are not just doing the habit and the behavior and it's all your fault and you just need to stop. This is not reality. Okay? So anyone who is telling you that this is just a shitty thing that you're doing in your adulthood for no reason, that it's just a behavior that you could stop and you're just choosing not to, and therefore you're just messing up your own life. Because that's what a lot of us truly believe when we look at our behaviors, when we look at the things that we do that are self-sabotaging, or where we abandon ourselves, or where we're not true to ourselves, or where we do things that then lead to pain. Because it is true that a lot of the time, people-pleasing leads to pain. We just blame ourselves. We just look and say, okay, this is a bad behavior. I'm abandoning myself. I'm people-pleasing. This is not okay. It's leading me into a position where I feel isolated, where I feel like I say yes to things I don't actually want to be doing. I say no to things I do want to be doing. I am not living a life that actually feels good for me. I'm living a life that I think I should be living. I don't know who I really am. I don't know what I really want. I'm conforming, all of these things. We just think I'm just fucking up my own life. I'm just making bad choices. And this is never the case. This is never the case. And if you feel shame or guilt, or like you're just choosing to be a people pleaser for no reason, this video is for you, and that's what we're going to talk about right now. Okay? First and most fundamental, important thing you need to understand. You did not simply choose to be a people pleaser, to abandon yourself, to not be genuine to who you really are, to not know who you really are, or what you really want, or what you really need. At 0 times in your life, I guarantee you this, did you have equal option to say, I'm going to learn how to just be my authentic self. I'm going to learn to get into the habit of expressing my true emotions, of expressing my true feelings, of being able to say yes when I mean yes and no when I mean no, and to be different, and to not go along with the joke when I don't think it's funny, or to not go along with what everyone around me is doing when I don't want to do that. And I could have just done that. And that was just an obvious thing I could do. Or I'm going to be a people pleaser. I'm going to abandon myself. I'm going to do what others expect of me even when it doesn't feel good for me. I'm going to go along with the joke when I don't like it. I'm going to constantly feel like people are judging me and worrying about what people are thinking about me, and judging myself based on how I think others are perceiving me, and changing my way of talking and changing my way of acting and changing the things that I'm saying and the things that I'm doing to match what I think is expected of me. And these are just 2 equal options, and I'm just going to choose the abandon myself one. That never happened. Right? Look at your life. Look at everything that you've been through. And I want you to ask yourself, if it really is just a bad choice you're making, when did you first make the choice that you were going to be a people pleaser and abandon yourself? Even though you clearly had the option. You clearly had the option to just be yourself and be safe and feel great. When did that happen? When did you choose to get into people-pleasing behaviors? When you fully had the option not to. I guarantee you, you can't think of that moment. Because it didn't happen. It doesn't exist. And it does not exist because in reality, the reason we people please is because we learned deep in our bodies and deep in our nervous systems that is what we had to do in order to be safe. The roots of people pleasing is a desire to be safe. It's a desire to be connected. It's a desire to be included. It's a desire to be seen. It's a desire to get our needs met. That is why we do it. So first things first is I want you to understand that you did not intellectually choose to be a people pleaser in your adulthood when you had full frontal lobe access, you had full understanding, you had full autonomy, adult awareness, and could have chosen to be authentic and then just didn't. That never happened. Rather, when you were growing up, you experienced that to be yourself, to have your needs the way that your needs are, to express the way that you express, to want the things that you want, to like the things that you like, to be how you are, was to be ignored, abandoned, shamed, guilted. You learned somewhere in your childhood that when you are yourself, when you are not people-pleasing, that you are not safe. So I really, again, want you to critically think about the way that you were raised and the environment that you were in. I want you to really consider, did you feel seen, heard, loved, valued, and respected by your caregivers? Did you feel like when you had a need, they were going to be there for you and that you could express it how it was for you without having to filter yourself? Did you feel like when you wanted something, you could just ask for it and be respected? Did you feel like when you had emotions, positive or negative, that you could just express them and that your caregivers would understand you and accept that and help you work through it? Did you experience your caregivers spending quality time with you and interacting with the you that existed without trying to filter you or change you or make you different? Or did you experience that when you were in pain or when you needed something or when you wanted something, being abandoned, being told that you were a burden, being shown on some level that your needs were too much and it wasn't okay? Did you experience being told that the things that you liked and the things that you were engaged in were wrong, bad, evil, shameful? Did you learn? Did you experience that the only times you got attention, the only time you were cared for, the only time you got one-on-one interaction was when you were helping someone else, was when you were giving something, was when you didn't have needs, was when you were the caretaker, when you were the counselor, when you attuned to the needs of the people around you and gave to them what they needed, when you were the good one. Did you experience being left out of your social group over and over and over again? Did you experience that the things that you were interested in, the things that you cared about, the things that you wanted to engage in, no one else cared about, and you were alone when you did that? Did you experience abandonment in the sense that just your caregivers weren't there for you? They didn't pay attention to you. They didn't attune to you. They didn't show up for you. You had to be something that they wanted you to be in order for them to pay attention to you. I'm going to go out on a limb and bet that if you are a people pleaser, you experienced at least one of those things that I just talked about. That you did not experience a secure connection in your childhood, where it was clearly demonstrated to you by the actions of your caregivers, the other authority figures in your life, and your peers, that you could be yourself, that you could express yourself, that you could have your needs and be safe and loved and seen and attuned to and provided for. You learned on some level in your body through your experience that you needed to change yourself in order to get your needs met. And remember, you may have had a childhood where your physical needs were met, where your caregivers provided a home for you, you had food, you had shelter, you weren't beat, you weren't outwardly abused. But you experienced deep emotional abandonment, not being attuned to by your caregivers, not getting one-on-one personal attention, not being supported in expressing and following and growing into what was real and true and interesting for you. And especially if you grew up in a household where there were very specific expectations of you, of who you were supposed to be, where your caregivers had ideas about what success looked like, what's good and bad, what's right and wrong. And they had ideas about who you were supposed to be that they projected onto you, that made you feel like, if I am not this person my caregivers want me to be, I'm failing. I'm doing something wrong. I get shamed, blamed, guilted, abandoned, ignored. The only times they celebrate me are when I do things that they approve of, but that I don't care about, or that I don't love, or that don't matter to me. And when I do the things that matter to me, when I explore the things that I care about, when I express in the way that's actually genuine to me, they ignore me or they shame me. These are the roots of people pleasing. Because again, just because we get our physical needs met does not mean we feel safe in our environment. Connection, being attuned to by our caregivers, and being given space to explore the things that are true for us, to explore the things that we're interested in, to express as our true nature, and to have that be received with love and interest is also a need. So in a way, we can see people pleasing as, I will abandon myself in this moment. I will abandon myself in this short-term situation. I will be what you want me to be. I will do what you want me to do. Because the thing that I'm seeking is connection. Not being alone, not being isolated, not being sent to be by myself. Getting some sort of attunement. Because if the two options are pretend to be something that I'm not and get some level of acceptance, approval, even caregivers who would not necessarily celebrate you with you, but would take your accomplishments and the things that you did right and all the things that they accepted, the things that you did that were pleasing to them, and parade you around to others. That was still something. Right? If the alternative was nothing, you don't get attention, they don't pay attention to you, you're just alone in your room now for hours and hours and hours, or you get shamed, blamed, guilted for being who you are, you're going to choose to abandon yourself to get that connection need met. You are going to choose to abandon yourself to get that connection need met. Because remember, in our childhoods, we are fully dependent upon our caregivers. We cannot provide for ourselves. And we have no concept of the idea that we're going to be able to provide for ourselves at some point. We only know that being loved, being accepted, being approved of by our caregivers is the way to get our needs met. And then eventually by other authority figures and by our peers. So learning to abandon yourself is a survival strategy. In your childhood, if you did not have a secure connection where your caregiver saw you for who you were, they valued you for who you were, they spent time with you, they fostered your growth, they made room for you and your emotions, they didn't ask you to caretake for them. If you didn't experience that, you felt existential threat in your little child body before your frontal lobe was online, before it was developed, before you had autonomy, before you had control over your life, before you could make yourself safe without them. You were learning deep in your body the way to survive and get my needs met physically is to be what the people around me want me to be. Because that's when they pay attention to me. That's when they listen to me. That's when they give me what I need. When I act like a good girl or a good boy, that's when they pay attention to me. When I do what they want me to do, that's when they meet my needs. When I don't, they ignore me, they abandon me, they shame me. And that separates me from the people that I am dependent upon for everything. And that is an existential survival threat. So there's that level. We learn to be people pleasers early as being literally a survival mechanism. People pleasing is not just a choice you're making in your adulthood. It's a nervous system program based on this very real lived experience of not feeling supported, seen, heard, validated, and like you're going to get your needs met by your caregivers when you are your real self. That's the first root. I'm going to say it again. People pleasing is not happening because you are just making a choice in your adulthood to people please. It is happening because you learned somewhere in your body that when I am my real self, when I express my real self, when I don't make myself be and do what other people want me to be, what my caregivers want me to be, I get abandoned, I get shamed, and therefore I'm not going to get my needs met because these are the people that I rely on for everything. That is an existential threat to me, so I must figure out what these people want from me so that I can get my needs met by being loved by them. I will abandon any part of myself that is getting in the way of my connection with my caregivers, because my connection with my caregivers is my survival. That's the first root. And then the second root, right, is this need for connection, the need for love, the need for attention, the need to be seen by others, the need to be in community. If we did not feel like we could be our true selves and still be loved and paid attention to and cared for and cared about, we were going to learn to abandon ourselves to get that attention, to get connection, to fit into the group. Because again, we are not just physical bodies who have physical needs. We are emotional beings who have emotional and social needs and connection needs. And if we learned early on that we can't get our social and connection needs met when we are being our true self, we will abandon ourselves to get that. So if there is still any level of shame in you that's telling you that you're just making these bad choices now in your adulthood, that you could just stop people pleasing and you could just be honest and you could just stand up for yourself and you could just say, I don't care about that, or whatever it is. And then you feel like whenever you try to do that, or whenever you're in a situation where you could be genuine and you aren't, where they're making a joke and you don't think it's funny, but you go along with it anyways, where you go along with the crowd even though you don't want to, and you just think, man, I suck. No, that's your body taking over to keep you safe. You're not just abandoning yourself for the sake of abandoning yourself, or because you're weak, or because you're choosing to, or because of anything because of you. It's not a choice you're making or a choice you made. You learned that. So I really want you to take that in right now. You learned to be a people pleaser in your body before your frontal lobe was online as a way of keeping yourself safe and as a way of getting your needs met. Your need for survival and your need for connection. That is where it comes from. Every time, with every person. You are not the exception. You did not choose it. You are not doing it to yourself. It is not something that you need to blame yourself for. So if you watch nothing else if you don't even watch the rest of this video, please go away with this that you are deeply considering. Where did you learn that it wasn't okay to be yourself? Where were you abandoned in your needs? Where were you not given attention? Where did it really feel like you had to change yourself and mold yourself to try to figure out what your caregivers wanted so that they would finally pay attention to you, right? You may now be an adult who can see that your caregivers didn't pay attention to you because they were just super busy. They were overwhelmed. They did not have the resources. Maybe you can see now they were in poverty or they didn't have the capacity and it had nothing to do with you. Right? And it doesn't look like outward abuse. And you could see that they were trying their best. And that's your adult perspective. Right? And a lot of us say, well, my parents were doing their best and it wasn't because of me and it wasn't their fault and they were just busy and all that stuff. And therefore, my people pleasing is my fault. Because in real reality, my caregivers weren't trying to hurt me. They weren't trying to abandon me. They weren't even necessarily rejecting the real me. It just felt like that as a child. So I have no reason to be a people pleaser. Wrong. Just because you can understand your caregivers now. Just because you can see the innocence in it now. Just because you can understand that they weren't capable or it had nothing to do with you or they were doing their best or they weren't loved in their childhoods and they weren't given all these things. Like, how could you expect them to give it to you when they didn't get it to themselves or when they didn't get it? Just because you can project that onto them now, just because you can understand that now as an adult, your child self did not know that. Your child self could not see that. And your programs and your patterns and your nervous system experience was built from your child perspective. Okay, so like the metaphor of just because your mom accidentally comes and punches you in the face when you're a kid, over and over again, right? If she accidentally, with no intention, punches you in the face, because that's what her mom did for her, or she just keeps falling, or some ridiculous thing, just go with the metaphor, right? She's accidentally hitting you. She doesn't mean it. And you can see that now as an adult. Does that mean that you weren't harmed? Does that mean that every time someone raises a hand like this, you're not going to flinch? Of course not. You are still going to have a bruise from somebody accidentally punching you. You are still going to have a nervous system pattern of flinching when someone raises a hand, even when it was an accident, even when they were doing their best, even when it wasn't their fault, even when that's what was done to them. It does not change the impact it had on you. Intention versus impact are two very different things. So again, just because you as an adult can see the intention, can see where it came from, can see that it wasn't their fault, does not change the impact. It doesn't change the impact. You needed to be safe to be yourself. You needed to be seen in your needs. you needed to be attuned to. You needed to have a safe space to express as you actually were. And if you did not have that, for any reason, you were going to learn to people please. Because that's what you felt you needed to do at the time to survive and get your needs met. Regardless of the intention, regardless of the actual circumstances. If that is what you perceived, that is what you are going to have as your pattern. And it is very important that we empathize with and deal with the actual child self that went through that and the actual conditioning we got versus the intellectual understanding that we now have as an adult. It doesn't matter what we can see now as an adult. It does not matter to our programming and to our conditioning and to our patterns now that we can see that our caregivers didn't mean it, or that we can see that it was innocent, or that we can see that it was a mistake, or that we can see that they were trying their best. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant to how it impacted you. So, how do we start to heal people pleasing? Well, first things first, everything I just said. We have to start with the compassion that people pleasing is a learned behavior that we learned deep in our bodies and deep in our nervous systems, was a survival mechanism, was what we had to do and what we had to be in order to be okay. Whether caregivers intended it or not, whether caregivers were doing their best or not, whether caregivers got love in their childhoods or not, doesn't matter. It is irrelevant. It has nothing to do with your healing and your experience. You need to acknowledge what your experience was. And we have to have compassion for the you that learned that being safe and getting my needs met means abandoning myself. That is step number one. And if we do not do that step, if we try to rush to empathizing with caregivers, if we try to rush to taking responsibility and changing our behavior, if we try to rush to seeing how this is a bad thing and just being different, we are never going to heal. If we do not allow ourselves to grieve and be upset about where our needs were not met, if we do not allow ourselves to be upset with our caregivers for how they failed us, if we do not allow ourselves to blame where the blame belongs, we are just going to keep beating ourselves up for a thing we didn't choose and a thing we are doing to try to protect ourselves. We're going to keep seeing our innocent attempts at keeping ourselves safe, which is what people pleasing is, as a bad thing, as a thing we should be ashamed of. We are never going to see it for what it is, which is an innocent desire to be safe. And therefore, everything we try to do to fix it will never fix it. Because we will not be addressing the actual issue. Right? If you have a parasite, you have a legitimate parasite, and you go to the doctor and they keep giving you an antihistamine because they're saying you're having an allergic reaction, it does not matter how much antihistamine you take. It doesn't matter what kind of antihistamine you take. It doesn't matter what time of day you take the antihistamine. It's never going to make you feel better because it's not addressing the actual issue. You need anti-parasite medication. If you keep trying to fix yourself based off the idea that you are just choosing to abandon yourself and you're making bad choices and you're doing it for no reason, and you keep trying to fix yourself from that perspective, it's like taking the antihistamine. You're not treating the issue. You have an incorrect diagnosis. And therefore, everything you try to do to fix it from that incorrect diagnosis is not going to work because you're not getting at the source. So what is the source? You people please because you want to feel connected and you want to feel safe. That is the actual root. You want to feel connected and you want to feel safe. That is why we people please. Every single time, no matter what. And you learned on some level that in order to get your needs met and in order to be connected with, you have to pretend to be somebody else. You have to attune to the wants, needs, and expectations of the people around you. You have to be hypersensitive to any amount of criticism you might be getting, any amount of rejection, any amount of not being seen and not being attuned to, and you have to change yourself to fix that. That is the point. So we get angry with caregivers, so we can stop projecting that anger onto ourselves. It is such an important phase. And in my coaching work, this is something we work on for a while with most people. Because again, most adults can see their caregivers through their adult perspective. And that makes it so that they feel like they're not allowed to get upset with their caregivers. Or that they shouldn't. And now I'm just being triggered and I'm just people pleasing and I'm just abandoning myself for no reason because my caregivers didn't mean it or it wasn't their fault or they didn't get love. No. It doesn't matter what their intention was. It doesn't matter why. It doesn't matter why. The only thing that matters is what you experienced. And you need to grieve that experience. You need to get mad at them and upset with them and upset about the circumstances so that you can stop being upset with yourself. That is step number 1. And I talk about this so much because, again, so many of us are stuck on this step. We're just not feeling safe or like we're allowed to be upset with our caregivers. And we empathize with them and we see them in their humanity and we just blame ourselves. But that is what, caused you to be the way you are. It's not a choice you're making. So you need to be upset with the circumstances, with the fact that your caregivers couldn't provide for you, the fact that they couldn't make you safe, the fact that they weren't loved. You can get upset with all of that so that you stop getting upset with yourself. Okay? That is step number 1. And then step number 2 is about recognizing that, again, this is about wanting safety and wanting connection. So just because we admit that these patterns are not patterns we chose, just because we admit that technically we were victims to our caregivers in our childhoods. That their lack of care and their lack of love and their lack of security, and they're asking us to be caretakers, and they're asking us to be someone that we weren't, and they're not being able to be there for us when we were in pain, and they're abandoning us or ignoring us or being too busy to be with us, and all of these things, just because we admit that we were victim to that, because we were. That is, we were the definition of victims as children. We had no power. We had no autonomy. We had no control. How our caregivers treated us and the impact that had on us was completely outside of our control. We couldn't choose to see it differently. We couldn't choose to be there for ourselves. We couldn't choose to understand that, hey, I can be my real self and my parents are still going to feed me. We didn't have that. So just because we choose to admit that when this all happened to us, we were victims, does not then mean we don't have power now. We have to be able to hold these two truths at once. We were a victim to our caregivers. We are going to have to go through a phase of blaming them so we stop blaming ourselves. It is going to be a phase. You won't be there forever. But it is so important. And then admitting, again, that you were a victim, that you did not choose this, that the patterns you have in your life right now are a result of what happened to you, does not then mean you can't change. Because that's where most of us get stuck, is we think I either admit that this was my childhood. It wasn't a choice of mine. It was their fault. And then I'm helpless. I'm stuck. There's nothing I can do about it. Or we say, no, it's my responsibility. I'm just choosing it. It's not because of my childhood. They didn't mean it. But that makes me feel like I have power. We need to be able to hold both truths at once. Our caregivers fucked up. It is because of them. We were victims. It's not our fault. We have to stop being angry at ourselves. And then, right, learning that, accepting that our caregivers fucked up. Accepting that they are imperfect. And then accepting that they may never accept us for who we really are. That being our real selves is going to mean rejection. That being true to who we are does mean our caregivers don't love us. They don't accept us. They don't approve of us. That other people don't accept us and don't love us and don't approve of us. That we are never going to fix or change or improve ourselves enough to get a perfect, secure connection. That is the obstacle. Most of us are stuck in people pleasing because there's still a part of us that believes if we do it enough, we're going to be safe. And we're going to be loved. That's what's happening. The people-pleasing part of you is still convinced that if you change yourself enough, if you conform enough, if you do what is expected of you enough, you will get the love and the security that you want, that you didn't get when you were a child. That's why changing these habits is so hard. Because we have to let go of the childhood fantasy of perfect love and perfect connection and perfect safety and provision. Letting go of that fantasy of perfect love, perfect safety, and perfect provision. And realizing that we are now adults who can provide for ourselves, who can be okay when other people don't approve of us. It's really hard. Most of us still really feel at the end of the day, like if I am my real self, I'm going to be alone forever. I'm not going to be safe in my job. I'm not going to have friends. No one's going to love me. No one's going to like me. Because we do get rejected. People do abandon us, even now in our adulthoods. Our caregivers don't approve of us. We don't get that perfect love that we want and that we need from them. We're still seeking it, and we don't even realize we're seeking it. It's hard. It's hard to accept these things. So this is why just stopping people pleasing isn't so easy. We have to let go of the idea that we're going to get perfect love and perfect security and perfect connection in order to do it. We have to come into this idea that we are adults who can still get our needs met and be safe, even if other people disapprove of us. And we often are going to have to prove that to ourselves over and over and over again by taking little steps of being authentic and being rejected, being misunderstood, being not liked, and seeing that we can still be okay. And we're going to have to work through the deep existential fears that are going to come up when we get rejected, or when people don't like us, or when people tell us we're not okay, or when we don't go along with it and then people really do treat us weird. That's hard. That's really, really hard. It's going to be deeply, deeply scary for a lot of us. So that's why, again, this whole self-love path, why I have all of these videos and the mystery school and the coaching and all this stuff. Because if it were simple, if we could just choose to stop and be our authentic self and not care, we would. Okay, I want you to understand that. If you could just stop and be your authentic self and not care what people think about you, you would. You would have done it already. It's a nervous system program. It's a survival instinct. Changing these things, becoming an autonomous adult who can see that you can be rejected and be okay, it takes a long time. Okay? I can say that with personal experience. I grew up without a secure connection. No one loved me. I was irritating, wrong, bad, shameful to everyone at every turn. And I tried so hard to be what everyone wanted me to be. And learning to just be myself, and to, number one, be okay with being rejected. To be okay with being misunderstood. To show my body over and over and over again that I could be okay as an adult, even when people didn't like me. It took years of practice. Years. Years and years and years. And then even learning that people could like me for who I was took years. And it's still something I'm working on. That survival instinct is still there. So the most important thing you can do to start making a transition out of this is to be kind to the part of you that wants to people please. This is the wrap up. We acknowledge that it's not a choice you're making. We acknowledge that it's not your fault. We do all of that work. And then we start to have compassion for the people-pleasing part. Because that's what the people-pleasing part needs the most. Safety. love, being seen and heard and validated. That part needs tenderness and care. You're never going to change by getting mad at that part of yourself, because the thing that part of yourself fears the most is rejection. So the more you reject it, the more you reinforce people pleasing. That's the key. The more you reject the people pleasing part of yourself, the more you reinforce your people pleasing behaviors, because the people pleaser in you is trying to avoid rejection. The more you love and accept that people pleasing part, the more you make space for it, the more you are kind to it, the more you say, how can I make myself feel safe right now? The more you're going to heal. Okay, that's what I want you to take away from this. The people-pleasing part of you is looking for safety, and it's looking for connection. So the more you make it safe and the more you connect, the more you're going to heal. All right. As I become more authentic, I get mad at the people who misunderstand me, and that anger is still so uncomfortable. Absolutely, right? Most of us only know how to be mad at ourselves. We only know how to blame ourselves. It's part of how we grew as children. It's more comfortable to believe that if it's just something wrong with me and I can just get mad at myself, I'll fix myself and then everything will be fine, than it is to say, these people don't get it and never will, and I have to accept that and be mad at them. That's hard. But it's what we have to do. Okay? So it's not a choice you're making. It is not your fault. You are not doing it to yourself. How can you have compassion for that part? What does the people-pleasing part of you need to feel safe and seen and loved by you? Can you start to face the existential fear of not being loved perfectly, of never being able to be loved perfectly? These are all hard things. And that's why the path often takes so much longer than we think it's going to. But if you take nothing from this video, please take, it is not your fault. You are not doing it to yourself. And the only way out is compassion for this part and looking to make it safe. We cannot reject it into a state of authenticity. You cannot reject yourself into a state of authenticity. Okay? Okay. So that's all we have for today. I hope that was helpful. Please critically think about this. Feel this. And move with compassion. You cannot reject yourself into a state of authenticity. It's just not going to happen. So if you are a people pleaser, that's where you are right now. That's a part of you that needs love and acceptance and tenderness and understanding. And the more you move from that, the more you're going to heal. Okay? Okay. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And I will see you when I see you.